Hey everyone and welcome back. So wanted to do a review of the new 4K release of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. We've been waiting for not just the first film, but all of them to get sort of 4K upgrades. Hopefully the sequels are coming soon. But at least the first one has finally come out in 4K for its anniversary now for 40 years, good lord. And as someone who grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street, especially the first one, all of them, but specifically the first one, I remember when I was probably a little too young maybe when I saw it for the first time. In fact, I think I saw it on TV actually for the first time. And I saved up my allowance so that I could go and buy the VHS tape from a record store. God, what's the name of the record store? I don't think it's around anymore. But anyway, but yeah, I literally saved up my allowance to buy the VHS tape, and I would watch it. Oh god, so many times I can't even tell you how many times I ended up watching the first film. And now all these years later, we do now have a 4K release. So a couple things before I dive into the technical aspects is I do want to mention that back in 2008, 2010, somewhere around there was a restoration that was done around that time, and which was great because I remember actually seeing it in the theater at the time. It was, but part of the problem with that restoration is they when they did the audio, they for some reason left out a couple of sound effects and a music cue, and I think there was maybe a piece of dialogue, I don't remember. And that's the version that we have had on video releases ever since then. Now with this release, luckily those issues have been corrected as far as I could tell. Now unfortunately there is no Blu-ray release, there's no Blu-ray included, and I don't even think there's an extra Blu-ray release. So unfortunately for those of you who have not made the jump to 4K, I think for the moment, sadly, you're stuck with the older Blu-ray with the older transfer on it. Now, this does have a 4K restoration. It does include both the original theatrical release and the uncut version. Now, the uncut version, I think, is literally longer by all of maybe 2-3 seconds, but still very, very cool to have. Now, obviously, this is the standard edition. There is a steelbook version, which is a nice alternative. I did order not only obviously the standard one, but also the UK one, which does come with a couple extra things, but I'll feature that in another video. So as far as the standard release goes, as you can see, I was just going to show you the packaging, the cover real quick. There's the front, which I'll get to the image in just a second, and the side with the title. And I actually do like that that is in fact the title as it looks in the opening of the first film. And then finally there is the back right there with some of the details and whatnot. Obviously the main thing is the picture of Freddy here on the cover, kind of a generic cover. Is obviously not Freddy from the first film, but if I'm not mistaken, it's actually a promo picture from Nightmare 4. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, really? A little bit lazy on Warner Brothers' part. So let me dive into the technical specs. So how does the film look? So the film came out in 1984. I believe it was filmed in 1983. Obviously a very low budget film. It's a film that really launched New Line Cinema, even though they've been around for a while. They were mainly a distributor. But the success of Nightmare on Elm Street really transformed New Line Cinema, and they started producing a lot more of their own films. In fact, New Line Cinema was often referred to as the house that Freddy built, in many, many ways. And I'm glad also New Line Cinema City pretty much embraced it. So obviously at the time, it was a very, very low budget film, so there are obviously limitations. But luckily, because it was such a special film to them, it has been kept very, very well all of these years. So the transfer, for the most part, is actually very nice. You can definitely see, obviously, a big upgrade to older releases with the older Blu-ray specifically. I've tried reading what other people have said. I didn't see any issues that I think some people might be worried about. As far as color timing goes, nothing stood out to me. That doesn't mean there isn't anything maybe off in a couple bits, but nothing stood out to me. I mean, I don't know exactly 100% how, the color timing is supposed to be on every single scene, but nothing stood out to me. I thought it looked really, really nice. I know some people have also said that it might be too bright or too dark. It didn't look that way to me. Actually, it had a good kind of, range between the two. There was no clipping that I could tell. If there was anything that I would agree with is some of the shadow detail does get lost a little bit in a couple bits, but I also don't know how much of that would be from the transfer versus just the original film stock that was used, which is something you do have to take into consideration. I'm not sure. It's not something I'm really going to fault the transfer for. And one of the things that I really did notice in a good way is you can really see the uptick in detail in it, for it being 4K. And there were a couple moments, especially in the film, where, especially with Freddy, because in obviously his first film, he's mainly in shadows or he's sort of half lit and things like that. But the few times you can kind of see parts of him, I could really see a lot more of the makeup and everything, and just how amazing the makeup really is. Because it is a little bit different than it is going forward. It definitely has much more of the sort of burnt grotesque look. So it's stuff like that that really, really stood out to me in a good way. Now, there is one negative that, or partial negative, I do have to mention. There has been noise reduction applied. Now, overall, I have no problems with noise reduction. And the thing is, it's a tool that can be used and probably is used most of the time. It's just a matter of how it's used. The problem with noise reduction is that it's a very fine line between the amount that you would use it for, that would just kind of maybe just clean up an image a little bit, versus going too far this way, and that's where you get like the waxy faces and you lose detail actually, and everything just looks kind of smeared and just terrible, basically, at least in my opinion. But that is a very fine line, and you have to kind of really walk it. So, you know, when restoration is done, whoever's doing that noise reduction really needs to know what they're doing. And I would say for most of the film, it looks great. Like, it looks like film. There are a couple shots where I could tell that there was some noise reduction kind of going on. Not horrible. It didn't have the waxy look. I mean, it still looked like film, luckily, but it is there. I do have to mention it because it did, and I did notice it. But overall, still a good, solid picture. As far as the audio goes, we have a couple audio options as far as other languages go, but we have two main audio options as far as we have a brand new Dolby Atmos mix, and luckily we do actually have the original theatrical mono mix, which is so fantastic. This is something that I've been sort of crusading for a long time, that every single release of a film should always have the original theatrical mix on it. I am not against new mixes, new surround mixes or anything of any film. Obviously, I have a surround sound system in here, so I'm totally okay with that, but every film should always have its original mix. That should be a standard across the board. I'm actually surprised how many studios don't do that. And Warner Brothers luckily did include it on this release. They don't always, I'll tell you that, but they at least did in this release. Now, as far as the audio goes, obviously I'd mentioned some of the missing pieces that have been restored. Sorry, my stomach's growling. I haven't eaten yet today. It may do that a couple times. So speaking of audio, so as far as the audio that was missing has been restored. Although there is one bit I'm not 100% sure on, but I'll get to that in just a moment. The Dolby Atmos, so I did watch it with the Dolby Atmos mix, and then I did go back and watch just certain parts with the original theatrical mix. Now, I did not watch the theatrical mix all the way through, so if there's any issue with it, if there is, I will cover it in another video once I have a chance to actually watch it through with that one. But for the most part, the Dolby Atmos track was fine. It was okay. The thing about Nightmare on Elm Street, the first film, is that it is very, as far as this mix goes, it's still very front heavy. You could tell that pretty much the only surround action is mainly music, which is fine. I love the score. And a couple sound effects here and there, but it still is very much front heavy, which isn't bad. And actually, I mean, I didn't mind it for the most part, because again, I do love the score, but the weird thing was, there were a couple moments where I think it was not mixed as well as it could be. And I'll give you one prime example that really stood out to me, is the scene in the bathtub where Nancy falls asleep and then Freddy's glove kind of comes out. In that moment, there's music that comes in just as the blade's sort of coming out of the water. And there's music that kind of starts, and it builds and builds and builds until it's sort of like reaching out at her, and then it kind of comes back down. The music in the Dolby Atmos version is very, like, it didn't seem like it really kind of rose. Like, it almost kind of stayed kind of the same level. And instead, sort of the Foley effects of the glove and the water and everything, is really kind of what stood out. I was like, that's kind of weird. And I kind of went, afterwards, I went back and watched that scene with the original theatrical mix. And that one definitely has it properly as far as the music that kind of rises through that moment. And there were little bits in here and there where I kind of felt like the mix wasn't, it was a little off kind of thing. That was the main one that really, I think, kind of stood out to me, though. But still, not a bad mix. And as far as the theatrical mix goes, again, from what I kind of checked out, it just sounds really good. Obviously, it's mono, so, but that doesn't bother me at all. You know, it's like, I love having that original mix, because also that's obviously the one I grew up watching. Now, as far as the one moment I do kind of want to just mention is the scene where Rod grabs Nancy. You know, she's walking to school, and he comes out and grabs her, and there's a music sting there. That's the one that's been missing for the last several years for whatever reason, is back, and it's in both mixes, but it's not very loud. Now, this is a case where I don't want to fault anything because I could be remembering this wrong, but for some reason I always felt that originally that sting, the music sting that happens when he grabs her, was always a lot louder. But in both versions here, though, it's kind of like it's there, but it's kind of soft. But I could be remembering it wrong. So if you guys know more than I do, definitely let me know. Is that wrong, or did it used to be a little louder? I don't know. But overall, I mean, the sound is, from what I could tell, is very clean. Again, a little minor caveats, especially with the Dolby Atmos mix. Again, nice, but I do need to kind of mention some of the things that seem a little slightly off. As far as the extras go, it does port over some pre-existing extras. They are good extras. You know, it does have the 2 commentary tracks that have been around for a while, including the one with Wes Craven, Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, and Jacques Haitgen. Now, the interesting thing is on the menu, actually, for the film, it says it's from 2001. I could have sworn that commentary track was done for the Laserdisc in the mid 90s or something. I could be wrong. Maybe it is from 2001 and I'm mistaking it, but I don't know. I think it was. I think I could be wrong, but I don't know. If you know, let me know, because I have a feeling, I mean, it's not a big deal. I kind of could care less whether or not it says 2001, but does have a couple of alternate endings, which are just kind of slightly different from the one that is in the final film. Also has the house that Freddy built about New Line Cinema. Has night terrors about the inspiration for Nightmare on Elm Street. And of course, the big one is Never Sleep Again, the making of A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is part of the Never Sleep Again documentary from several years ago. So for those of you who don't know, Never Sleep Again was a great documentary done on the entire Freddy franchise. It went through all the films and interviewed a ton of people from each film. Really fantastic documentary. It's like 4 hours long or something. So the part that only covers the first film is on here, and it runs like 50 minutes, I think. Even though there's nothing new here, it is still a nice assortment of extras, and obviously because there's no Blu-ray, all the extras are on the 4K disc. All right, so let me wrap this up, go over my scores real quick. I keep going back and forth on a couple of these, but honestly, I kind of have to go with my gut. So as far as the picture quality goes, overall, very, very nice. Some minor caveats, however you pronounce that. I have, for some reason, my gut is telling me instead of going higher, I kind of want to go with a 4 out of 5, and I'm just going to keep that. I may change it over time as I watch it more and more, but for right now, I'm going to stick with a 4 out of 5. Audio, kind of same thing. I'm going to stick with a 4 out of 5 because the audio is really good, especially since the original theatrical mix is here. Again, the Dolby Atmos mix is nice. A couple, again, unevenness in the mixing, but overall, nice. Theatrical mix, even better. I think. I still got to watch the whole thing through. But anyway, 4 out of 5, at least for now. The extras, I love the extras, but again, they are older extras, but still happy they're here. But again, same thing. I think I'm just going to go 4 out of 5 for these. Because for a lot of us, who've had all these other releases over the years, there's not really anything new here. I'm not going to fault it that much because I'm glad it carries it over. And as far as my overall score, which obviously includes my own sort of personal feelings on the film, I love this film. I love all of them, but I have a very special place in my heart for the original film. So happy to have it in 4K. But I have to admit, as much as I love the film, I don't know why, there's something on me that is something in me that's just kind of like, stick to 4. So even though I may change my score, sort of revisit it later on, I may, up it or something. So, but for right now, even my overall score, I think I'm going to keep it out of 4 out of 5. Again, so happy to have it in 4K. It is nice. I don't want to disparage anyone from picking it up, especially if you love the film like I do. But I want you to also go into it with certain expectations. Is this the ultimate release of A Nightmare on Elm Street? No. But it is a nice release, and I think that's kind of the key, is that it's just a solid, nice release of the film. So those are my thoughts on the 4K release of A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. I'll try and answer them as best I can. If you've picked it up, definitely let me know your thoughts. And hopefully the sequels are on the way, hopefully. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.